when I first met, back then it was Bruce Jette. Well, hello, Heidi. How are you? Miss Shoes in the house. I just wanted you to know. But when I first met Dr. Jette, he was Colonel Jette, and he was running the Rapid Capabilities Office for the Army, putting equipment into the hands of soldiers on the battlefield, which was very, very important to us. So one of the questions you probably want to ask him now is, now that he's the senior acquisition official, how the logistics support and sustainment with those rapid capability initiatives work, and how much more time he spends on that than he did on putting the capabilities in the hands of soldiers. Maybe not. But bottom line, what you heard this morning is General Murray from Futures Command and Dr. Jette are joined at the hip, trying to get the acquisition and the requirements piece tied together in a knot so that we can start acquiring and fielding equipment, and you've already heard some of the success stories. So without further ado, I will introduce my friend, Dr. Bruce Jette.
That's right.
Yes, sir. At least he was my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. That was really good thinking on your feet while we're over here trying to get me mic'd up. So the president, by the way, was just like having a sandwich next door or something, so there was no way to get here. Yes, there a lot of police outside. Okay, so, well, good afternoon, everybody. I could be like Ranger and start going, is that as loud as you can be? So what I want to do is I want to hit a couple high points, then give you some time to go ahead and ask me questions. And I think that it'd be better as a bit of an exchange. I'll kind of hit some topics which you may have heard some things about with my brother from another mother this morning. Mike Murray and I, a lot of times there's always these questions like, do you have problems with AFC and ASALT? And I often, just to address it right up front, I often tell you, there's two organizations. There's two organizations. One's been around for a while, has to change some of the things that we do, and the other one has never been around and has to form what they're supposed to do. And you get a rub here and there, but we work through those rubs. Mike Murray and I both get along tremendously. We do everything we can to avoid having to go to mom and dad or something, the chief and the secretary to sort things out. In fact, I don't think we've ever had to go to them for anything. We usually go to them to tell them what we got done. So I didn't get to read their talks today or see what they talked about. I apologize if I'm treading old ground, but these are some issues that are central to what I've been doing in my role as the acquisition executive, and I thought that I would just try to top line some of them. So I'm sure the secretary, because I know he says it frequently, is that the changes we made, particularly with AFC, has been the largest change since the 1970s in modernization. If you take a look at the top 6, which you all know of, I'm sure, putting our focus against those top 6 has been a significant change as to how things were done prior to the decision to do so. Basically, we had large programs with a lot of money in them, funding lines, and you know how it is with Congress. Funding lines should be smooth, okay? Sometimes they want to have it smooth. Even if you actually had to make a bigger buy in a particular year for a particular reason, they'll sometimes lop it off and you just have to figure out what to do about it anyway. So these funding lines are really smooth over a long period of time. And this is one of the biggest things I think that sometimes the senior leaders don't get credit for that really should. To go in and do the night court, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the night court's efforts. To go in and do the night court is a really gutsy move. It wasn't like, well, I'm going to cancel 1 or 2 programs. There were shotguns coming out, just killing things. And a lot of money was moved around in those the first night court, There was not quite as much, but still a fair amount moved around in the second night court, and we're working the third night court now. And there'll be more moves. And the thing I think is one of the most interesting pieces about it is that one, they had the guts to do it. Two, that Congress actually looked at it and said, okay, we'll give you a shot to do this. And three, that we've continued to refine it. So in some cases, we're going back, and I'll tell you, we took money out because we killed programs, or we downsized programs. That gave us a year to look at this new clean space with some different arrangements as to what we're funding. So because you decrease the money in particular funding profiles, you turn around and you say, we'd like to put it in these funding profiles, which accommodate our top 6, and we stick with that. And I think probably Congress was thinking maybe not. I don't know if they really mean it. The next year we come around and we take a look again, and as we do, we've now got a year under our belt, and we've got the funding profiles moving towards different programs. Those programs are beginning to move along, and you sit there and say, you know what? I was a little hasty on this decision. I think that based on what I see here, I need to move some money back into it. I need to move some money from this one and not slow it down. And by the way, I can accelerate something that's out here now because if I have that money, if I accelerate this, I know this program's going to take a little while before it matures. When I do, I want to be able to bring that ramp up. So if I move this one to the left, I'll have money there to move up into that program. And so that's a lot of the essence of what has been done inside of the night court, is a much more deliberate, not program by program alone, but holistically within the FIDEP. How do we arrange the funding to get to the programs that we want to get it to get the end state, which is what the real objective is, which is a product in the hands of a soldier. In the 21 to 25 deep dive, we've identified $13 billion in the FIDEP, so the budget submission that's there now. $10 billion of that is from Army modernization. So even though we wire brush this, we wire brush it again to see if we need to move money from one program to another. $3 billion contributed to OSD objectives. We had 80 programs that were eliminated or reduced. 41 programs were eliminated, it was about $3.1 billion, and then 39 programs were reduced or delayed for about $4.3 billion. So even in the 21 budget submission, we made some significant rearrangement. 12 programs got reinstated for about $600 million, and we accelerated 8 programs. We accelerated the elimination of 8 programs, and then we accelerated 9 programs for about $2.1 billion. So that's this issue that I'm trying to make sure is clear. The night court is not just where we sat there and really took the shotgun out and just shot programs for the sake of saving money. It was to take a look at how we achieved those top 6 objectives, given that we didn't believe we were going to have a significant change to the top line for us, and how do we want to spend that money more effectively to get to those and reprioritize. So you prioritize against the 6, you lay that out, and the next year you do the same thing, knowing what you've now learned over a year, which gives you a chance to rearrange, sometimes bringing things forward so you'd have money in the out years where you want for things that are going to mature at that time. So it's anticipatory even in what we've tried to do. I don't think people have made that. They focused on the fact that we all got in a room and went through every program, when that's the real effort that we were making, is to better manage the resources that were provided for us by Congress. So there's also some questions. I get a number of questions about MTAs and OTAs. And So let me tell you, we've got 11. So MTAs come in 2 flavors. Middle tier acquisition, 804, authorizations. Congress gave us that authorization, I think, in the 18 budget, NDA. And so let me describe what I think the best deal out of the MTA is. There's nothing that you can do in the MTA that you couldn't do with a FAR-based contract. The thing is, it's upside down, okay? And we all have cultures we work in. So a FAR-based contract is basically, and I'm sure you've all seen it, I would have brought it, but probably you guys just ate, so you get nauseous. The acquisition chart with the 3,000 boxes on it, okay? So we have all of those up on the chart, and then from the authorizations within the acquisition rules are you can sit there and you go, you know what? I don't think we need to do that. You take it off and you put the box on the table. And when you get all done, out of the 5,000 little boxes, maybe you have 1,000, okay? One of the boxes you can't peel off is the JSIDS process, which is kind of really what starts the whole thing flowing. And the problem isn't the JSIDS process at the beginning, per se. The problem is if you make a change anywhere in the middle, you gotta have to go back and start over. And that can take, literally, it can take you a year to get through the JSIDS process a second time. So that's the standard FAR-based approach. The biggest value of the MTA is, you know all those little boxes I said are all over that big sheet? They're all on the table. They're still there. They're just laying on the table. And you have a blank, like, I don't know, I'm gonna probably show my age because there's probably younger people here who only had touch screens or something, but we used to have these felt boards in school, and they'd, make little, you'd cut out little crisp leaves for fall, and you'd stick them up on the felt board. And anybody remember those? All right, a couple. Good. Okay. I was getting a little worried there. You pick them up and you stick them back up on the board, and you add the ones you need. Well, this is a cultural issue, okay? Generally, I find that the acquisition community and those that work with and around it are more reluctant to take things off the board than they are to add a few, not add aggressively. So the MTA gives us the ability to encourage a much more deliberate addition of what you need to do and thoughtful addition. So the end state is that you get a much more streamlined approach to the final acquisition. The second thing is there's no box that says JSIDS that you add to the process. That doesn't mean that you can't coordinate with the other services, nor does it mean you couldn't operate a joint program through this. It just means that you're not mandated to go back and forth through the JSIDS process every time that you have a new requirement or want to adjust the requirement. And I don't know, I'll ask you this. Did Mike Murray talk to you about system characteristics versus requirements?
He did.
Okay. Would be much more difficult to do that in a standard FAR-based approach than it is if we're doing the MTA approach, because we can spiral the program and the characteristics so that when we get to the point where we're going to produce something, the production people are going to know what the requirements are, and hopefully they'll have some involvement in the development of that requirement. On top of that, we're using OTAs. Okay, well, let me, before I go to the OTAs, remember there's an MTA for, I said there were 2 flavors. One flavor is the development of a prototype. You got to get that done in 5 years or less. And then you have a second half, which is a development of the actual fielded system. And it's not just the development. You actually have to field the whole thing to the Army. That one's kind of hard to do because you still have EMD in there, and then you have to do the production and fielding within 5 years. And Generally, you probably can find a way to field something to the entire Army in 5 years if you have an infinite bucket of money, but we don't. And so therefore, usually our fielding sequence extends well past 5 years. Your first line units will get them first, and your last line units get them last, and that's just the realities of funding. Most of the, in fact, 11, we have 11 in this first category that are prototype development MTAs, and we only have one that's a production MTA. OTAs. OTAs are really good, particularly when they're matched with MTAs. My view of the OTA is that it provides a much better interaction with who you're contracting with to get to a good agreement. It's an agreement, okay? For those of you who have, I had a small company before I came back in the government. 12 years, did some contracting with the government. I mean, I had been a PM beforehand, and then I'm on the other side, and I'm getting stuff from contracting. And FAR-based contracts are very structured and not always easy to understand, even if you have a pretty decent idea of how to do work with the government. If you're a small business and you've never done work with government and you're not sure if you still want to, after your first FAR-based contract, you might likely just run the other way. I still remember, every one of my contracts asked me whether I'm hiring children in Bangladesh. I'm not kidding. It's a FAR clause. You get these things. You get hundreds of these things. And there are a couple of them. Look, I'm the acquisition executive. I remember when I said, do you do this? I have no idea what you're talking about. I think I'm doing it right, yes. But it's so convoluted that it's difficult for anybody but a contracting officer or a lawyer, perhaps, to understand. When you're trying to bring new blood into the fold, then you're not going to entice a lot of people to come to that. And that comes right down to my issue with SAM. You have to register on SAM if you want to do work with the government. And you get all these contract clauses in there, and they say, you know, the first page is pretty easy. Who are you? What's your company? Where are you registered, et cetera, et cetera. Second page starts to get a little bit creepy. Are you owned by a federal, foreign government? Does the foreign government have influence over you? Are you really lying? You know, I mean, it's just not that pointed, but it is. And so you start, if you're a small business and you've never done these things before, and you're trying to think that I've got a really good idea, I want to get to the Army. I've got a better idea for a helmet or for body armor or for some. I've developed a new ceramic that looks like it's really, really good and very light. Well, the way we structure some of these things, people get on there and they look at these clauses after clauses after clauses. You get to the very bottom one right before you hit send, and it says, if you hit send, you're swearing and attesting to the fact that these are right under penalty of perjury. There's a finish button and a cancel button. I'm not going to jail. I'll find another source of income and click. So the OTAs don't work like that. I mean, eventually they get into the SAM, but there's this shepherding that can go on, particularly in consortium OTAs. We've done a lot of work to try and put together good, smart, quality OTAs. We have 830 of them in FY19 and for $4.9 billion. And generally, the OTAs are working pretty well. They're bringing in non-traditionals. So I'm very pleased about that. We're also using the OTAs to get a better handle on IP. So, you know, we put an IP policy out, and now we're trying to implement it. And I say that because fundamentally we didn't care about IP. The government didn't. And that's caused a huge number of problems. I get J&As, which are sole source justifications, that frequently are because 10 years ago, nobody cared about IP. And I got no place else I can go. There's nothing else I can do. I can't compete it because I didn't pay attention to the IP. In some cases, I'm finding that some of the IP that we did pay for, we don't even know we own. So we have to get that back. Or we paid for it, we paid for it and do own it, but we never had it delivered. So I can't share something with somebody if I don't have it in my possession. That's like me asking you, how about I buy you a car? How about you give me the money for a car? I'm going to drive it. And you say, well, wait a minute, I paid for that car. Yeah, but you didn't ask for it. Okay? So the policy is to be honorable on both sides of that equation. If corporate America invested their money, their investors' money in intellectual property that is valued to the government, I want to pay you equitably for it and fairly. On the other hand, if I paid for it, I own it. Okay? Now, if you want to use it, I'm from Jersey. We could talk. Okay? There are things we can do to make sure that that's properly licensed to me or licensed to you. And that's all. It's a very commercial approach to things. To give you a little feeder on that is that we've had one system we're going out for competition with. That's all. We own all the IP. We have all the IP. If I have a system that I pay your company to build something, but I own all the IP, you may think that that's not very nice because I built that and was a good partner with you. Okay, well, I get all the, but I paid you. You know, that new car you have is because you got paid during this period.
Happy
So,
to do it.
okay, good. So now I've got the IP, and I come back and I say, well, I'm going to put the IP out for bid. Who wants to bid to build this? And you've got the first 5 years, the next 5 years. Let's see. I want to compete it. Because you're a nice guy, but I know the guy back there. He's not so nice. Okay, like Rich Whitstruck. So, not that we're doing names, but yeah. So I want to, if I did the contract with him, it'd be a different discussion. You're giving me a really fair price. He's going to jack the price up. So now I want to get in a competition again so that I can get a better price for the government, more equitable price for the government. And so I've got the IP. I put that out at a proposal. Clearly the company who already is doing it has a leg up. They probably have jigs. They probably have the layout. They don't have to figure out a bunch of, they'll be able to build that without having nearly the initial overhead issues that a new company would have. But another company who's aggressive may well be able to do some smart things that you're not doing and offer that up. So what we want to do is we want to see just how smartly can we get to a better end state. So using the IP more effectively is making a bigger difference. We've done a number of large contracts where the IP was very informative. The contracts, larger contracts are going out now, and it says, tell me your top line price, tell me what you declare is your IP, and tell me the deal. So now I can look at what the whole cost of the system is, okay? For not just now, but long term. Had some people done that 10 years ago, I wouldn't be signing the number of J&As I'm signing. Or if I did, I'd actually feel better about it because that was the deal I figured was the best deal at the time. So it has, I will tell you this, we still have learning and methodologies we need to do better in the future. We put some IP attorney groups together, and we've done, we've gotten some of the contracting officers, just like we have some expertise in the OTA area. We're doing some similar things in the IP area. So I want to close real quickly here. I know that they talked a little bit about hypersonics today as well. You know, I was looking at one of the things that Secretary McCarthy wrote in one of his statements a few days ago, and I think this is not a quote. This is me paraphrasing, but it basically said, you know, we developed hypersonics quite a while ago, and demonstrated it quite a while ago. And then we decided we weren't going to pursue it for military weapons' sake. And our competitors have decided differently. And it puts us in a position of saying, okay, fine. I guess we're going to have to be involved. So we're not starting flat-footed. We have moved out swiftly, and I think this coming year you'll hear a little bit more direct input from us on how far we're able to move in such a short time, and mostly because we knew what we were doing before we even started. Some of the federal labs are amazing and awesome, and the companies that are in America, you know, there's sort of this feeling that we don't make anything. We make some exotically beautiful stuff. And when called on, industry is producing some tremendous materials. So, all right, so I don't know how much time I have left before you throw me off, but let me give you...
About 8 minutes, sir. You got plenty of time.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So let me open it up to questions. Sir.
Hi, Dr. Jette. Jerry Parker from CACI. Got a quick question. Do you draw a distinction on the IP side from what you procure as hardware versus software? The reason I ask that is that I've seen instances where the government, even though there may be embedded software inside the hardware, they don't ask for, I'll say, government purpose rights to it. They just want the box to function. Versus if they buy software, they want the complete source code, which would then open up the intellectual property to be shared with others. So I just wanted to get your opinion.
So yeah, that's a good question. So I tell my people there are three ways of securing your IP. Basically, there's trade secrets, which is Coke. Okay, now Coke's a trade secret. There's a vault. It's very cool. That, you know, it's buried in the ground or something, and like 4 people on Earth know its recipe, and the guys at all the bottling plants that mix it. But that's a different discussion. And it's not that I couldn't figure it out. It's just they'll never tell me if I was right. So sometimes I'll get something that says, oh, this is proprietary, except it's like a can of Coke. Yes, I don't have the recipe, but I sure can make something that tastes like it, okay? So trade secrets is one piece. Patents are a little more difficult. And I don't believe, having patents myself, that we should purposefully try and find a way around a patent. License the stinking patent. And then there are copyrights. Software generally is copyrighted. That becomes a little bit more of an issue. So it goes back again to a priori. What did you bring to the table that you declare is yours? And what's a deal? Okay. If you do, so let's go to the box. Box a little easier. Okay, I got a box. I'm building it for you at your expense, but it's got embedded software that somebody else wrote. It comes with the box. I still want to know if it's got embedded software, so who's keeping up the software? Am I now paying for its maintenance, or is this a service that you're going to be providing? So it's not so clean right there, and what happens is we find out usually when that software stops working, okay? So I want people to put sort of, okay, that box and everything in it, what's that goes into is that goes out is the functionality. And when I'm buying it from you, you're telling me that this box is functioning this way, and therefore you're going to pay for the upgrade. That's easy. If you write code, but you've a priori developed a bunch of modules that you're going to use in it, there are good software licensing agreements that you can say, you can use all these modules, but if you pass them off to a competitor, they can't be decompiled. They can't be used in any other program except this program for the purpose of this program, and those type of things. I'm good with that type of an approach. Again, I want to be fair and honorable to the work you've done. Okay. And if, by the way, if the rest of that module altogether was good and useful, come talk to me. We can do a little licensing arrangement the other way.
I'm from Jersey, sir.
Yeah, hey. Okay, others. Yes, sir.
Sir, Charlie Wells from Red Hat. What are your thoughts on open source software in Army and government systems?
I like the price. Open source software is acceptable in my view to be used in systems if it's properly cleaned, okay? And the cyber teams have checked to see that those modules you're downloading to include in the system are not in some way corrupted. The biggest problem with open source software isn't that the open source software isn't effective. It's a lot of times in open source, nobody's watched who's been putting what into the code. And so then it becomes a question of, is it cheaper to just have you write the stupid thing straight from scratch and not have to worry about that? Or is it going to cost me more to work through the code? Because you almost have to do it line by line. Okay.
Right. And sir, we're running out of time. Just one last question. Everyone was very interested this morning on FARA and when we should expect the outcome in terms of the two prototyping awards, sir. Just notionally.
Oh, he's picking dates for programs. He's going to type. And I don't want to say the wrong thing.
I'm recording, too.
It's all good, sir. I didn't mean no.
I don't remember. I don't.
Apologize.
So I'm testifying tomorrow morning, and I got 800 programs I'm trying to stuff in my head, and I'm going to say the wrong thing. There, I actually give a piece of paper. I don't remember. It's 23. I think.
It's all good, sir. Please
I think
please
it's
join me in thanking Dr. Jette.
Thank you.